Today I'll be sharing my process for beading a full moon in honor of the strawberry moon that is occurring this week. I find the full moon calendar to be a great source of inspiration for subject matter, and if you're familiar with my work, you've probably seen a lot of variations of beading and embroidery that I've done in this style. I don't know how many full moons I've beaded, but I know it's a lot. I have a tendency to repeat subject matter that I really like over and over again in different ways. Let's get into the project. I've already drawn out the whole piece, and I've already filled in the embroidery spots with thread. If I'm doing a piece that I'm planning on both embroidering and beading, it's my preference to get all of the embroidery done first and then move on to the beading. And that's because for me, it feels less precarious to have a hoop stretched over embroidery floss as opposed to a hoop that's stretched over beadwork. I was recently asked by one of my subscribers why my hoops aren't stretched super tightly compared to maybe other embroidery artists that they would see online. For example, I have a piece of work right in front of me, beading a bunch of little symbols that I'm then cutting out to add a little button frame around. So I'm embroidering and beading them individually though, with a hoop that is small enough to contain the symbol. You can see it's not that tight. There's a bit of give to this piece. I'm not exactly sure at this point why I do things the way that I do, because I've been embroidering for a really long time. A lot of my choices feel very instinctive, but I am trying to avoid damaging the fabric underneath because it will always kind of leave a dent in the fabric. The hoop will leave a dent in the fabric. So the tighter it is, the more intense that will be. So I try to keep it kind of soft. As I'm working, I hold the piece with my left hand and use my fingertips to guide the needle with every stitch. So my fingers actually tighten it a bit and then catch the needle as I'm stitching. I hope that answers the question. I thought I would pepper in a bit of Q&A when I make these videos. Usually with the hoops leaving a mark on stuff, I can just iron it out because I tend to iron my designs after I do them, especially with like clothing or larger tapestry pieces. And with a bit of water and steam, the hoop marks will go away if they're not too severe. But there is like a point of no return, so I try to be really gentle with my fabrics and keep it just as tight as it needs to be with ease in it. But if I'm doing a work that is fabric contained in a hoop and the subject matter is all contained in the hoop, it's less important to me whether or not the hoop makes a mark because the fabric's not coming out of the hoop. The finished piece is going to be set in the hoop, so I tend to keep stuff like this a bit tighter, and you can kind of see that there's not like a looseness the way this one has a bit of looseness to it. So for the circle of the full moon, I used a template to draw the circle. I think I picked this up at a local art supply store. Once I drew the circle, I hand drew the face inside, as well as a bit of shading around the inside edges of the circle. Before I start beading the moon, I'm going to fill in 2 water droplets with light blue beads. I like to include a representation of the water elements when I make work about the full moon, and the moon is also associated with emotions, which is also associated with water. Okay, now that that's done, we can start beading the moon. I'm going to begin with outlining the circle in the darkest shade of gray bead that I have. This one is like a dark iridescent slate gray. These beads are a bit longer than a standard seed bead, and I'll be stringing 6 beads on at a time and then back stitching halfway to reinforce the row with an extra stitch in 3 of the beads. Once the boundary of the moon is fully outlined, I move on to the details of the face. For beading the eyes, I always begin with the pupil and then work around it. I'll be using the same shade of dark gray bead that I used for the outline to add the details of the eyebrows and upper eyelid of the eye. And I'm actually not outlining the whole eye. Sometimes when a face I'm beading is quite small, I refrain from outlining the entire eye because I find it to be a bit too intense for my preference. That's just how I like it. I mean, there's no rules to how you're gonna make visual art. You can do whatever you want. For smaller details like this, I stitch less beads at a time per stitch, and this gives me more control with what I'm doing. After I finish all the details, the last step is filling in the moon. For this moon, I have two different beads I'll be using, a silver seed bead for the main face and a gray bead that is a shade between the pale silver and the dark gray of the outline. So this will act as a bit of shading. Sometimes for faces, I like to bead directionally with the curve of the face, and sometimes I bead in straight vertical lines. I don't really know why I choose to do which method when I do it. For this moon, I'll be filling in the center with vertical lines of beads, and I'm starting at the center of the face and working out to the sides. I'm back to putting 6 beads on at a time and stitching backwards halfway and then forwards through 3 beads to reinforce the stitch. And I'm working around and through the details that I've already beaded in the center. I like this part of the process because it becomes very meditative. The only part I really have to think about is where I want to add those slightly darker shades of gray beads near the edges of the inner circle. Once the moon is completely filled in, I finish it by wrapping it around a piece of acid-free foam core. Here's an example of a smaller version of it. I've been cutting up this for these little pieces. So once the moon piece is wrapped around the acid-free foam core, I will secure it in a vintage frame that I sourced at my local thrift shop. I didn't film this process for this video, but I do have other videos on my channel that show this process step by step. I believe my beaded snake video shows how I do this. Here's how the piece came out. I hope you enjoyed seeing my process for the beaded moon. I hope you're having a good week, and I hope you're able to enjoy the beauty of the full moon with whatever rituals you like to do. I look forward to sharing my next video with all of you. Bye!